Welcome to Isn't It Obvious, where things are obvious. That's going to be the intro.
That's going to be the intro forever now.
Right.
Okay. Topic. All right. Isn't it obvious that churches and nonprofits should be paying property taxes like any other property holding organizations?
They don't have the same tax bracket, right? Like nonprofits and churches are a different type of tax bracket because one is religiously affiliated, so that's constitutionally protected, air quotes, as opposed to nonprofits saying that through the means of their business, they have to write off a lot of costs in order to benefit whomever they're supposed to be benefiting, right?
Yes, maybe. I'm not sure. I would need to know specifically.
There seems to be a lot of legalese here.
Yeah, which I don't know enough about. So, like, it would be great if we had an expert here. But I'm just throwing it out there. Isn't it obvious that these organizations should be paying property taxes if they have properties on which they conduct their business? Like a church. Like if you have a like parking lot and a parish and people come there, there should be taxes.
Yes and no.
Because like yes, they're already paying like. They're paying utilities.
Well, they're paying some
maintenance,
taxes on there. They're paying local taxes. I don't know if they're paying federal taxes.
Are they? Okay, I don't
so.
know. I
haven't looked into it, but I don't think you can just have like a half acre in a metropolitan area and pay nothing on it.
I think that you don't pay property taxes, and
I don't know. I guess maybe I'm mistaken.
No, and I'm pretty sure they don't pay taxes on certain services and objects too. I
don't think tithes are taxed.
But,
or whatever is given to you by your parishioners. I don't think that's taxable income.
Yeah, because it's donations, technically.
I think,
which I think is fine.
But
because I don't think that.
Are
I don't
the
think
salaries
donations
of like the pastors taxable?
See, I think that should be taxed.
Are they though? Like, are they
it.
Currently taxed on that income?
I don't know.
That seems like
if
they
are,
would be taxed
they should
on that
be.
income.
If they aren't, they should be. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I feel
it's too bad we can't Google this.
I feel a line that should be drawn is whatever tax benefits a church receives, if that church acts in a political manner, that should be revoked. So if you have like a megachurch, because I think didn't Pat Robertson say like it's God's will that Donald Trump should be president or something like that?
If you're endorsing a political
if you're using
candidate,
your platform to get into politics, and you're mixing the church and the state, then your tax protection should go away.
That I would agree with. If you're gonna involve yourself in American politics, you should not have tax exemption.
Or I think even international politics. Like a church in Detroit gave the key to the city of Detroit to Saddam Hussein.
So I don't know if international necessarily, because like. I would say there's certain like social justice issues that I think nonprofits in general, including churches, should absolutely have a voice in, because it goes with their mission, right? Potentially, not all of them, but like for example, the current ruling on the George Floyd's murderer. Him being found guilty, like Chauvin, thank you. That could be a church issue in a way, like a faith issue. It could be.
How so?
Like for example, as an Jesus was, he spoke his mind and he was killed by officials, right? So his sacrifice or whatever is comparable. In a way.
Can we not Nancy Pelosi this, please? What she said was bad enough.
So for the listeners, this episode was recorded shortly after the Chauvin trial, where one of the California, is it House
Representative
of
from San Francisco? Yeah, she's a House representative.
Mentioned something about we think George Floyd for his
sacrifice. Okay, fair enough. Yes, it's not. It wasn't. He was murdered. Like he didn't.
His purpose on Earth wasn't to be murdered by a white cop, and that white cop getting prosecuted for the murder he committed.
But you could, as a person of faith, say this is an important case, right? This is a very important case, and it's very important to our faith that, whatever this you could spin it this way, I guess.
But is
what
that
I'm
inherently
saying.
political if you're saying that the unjust murder of a civilian was wrong?
Well, unfortunately, at this point, it feels very political because that's where the sides are drawing a line.
Or you're saying a church is on the side of, like, Derek Chauvin did God's work? Because, like, that
Well,
would be wrong and messed up.
so like I guess I'm referring to in this case this was a Facebook post on a one of our friends sent us that Facebook post of that.
Oh, I do my best not to read those. They would just anger me.
I mean, they are very
Facebook
full of
is a
rage,
disgusting cesspit.
but like it is. One of our friends has a job and she monitors like the comment section basically on a
her company's
religious
social media board.
Yeah, basically, and
it gets
there
real
was
gross.
yeah. So it's clear that some of the people are very one-sided on this issue, and others are a little more like reasonable on the other side, and it's and they made it about faith, and so like I think you could make you. Yeah, I don't know. That's tricky though, because like it ends up being political, even if it's not inherently like it's a social justice issue.
What inherently makes it political through that lens? That's the square I'm not circling here.
It's the people who are commenting that are making it political, I guess.
So one of the things I want to mention,
Not the church itself.
as a Catholic, is the Passion plays that would take I don't know, front stage and center for after Easter or during Easter, where it has a lot of anti-Semitism because yay Catholics, but the idea that you are going to give in to a crowd. So Pontius Pilate, of course, is being portrayed as like a kind of like not just an asshole, but like a coward, because during the whole run up to his Jesus Christ, crucifixion, is that there was a riot, right? There were people that wanted the state to execute the law, which is that blasphemy should be punished by death or something like this. And Pontius Pilate is trying to do his best to kind of like play the side or angles, right? Instead of actually like sticking to his guns and doing the right thing, you can see he's a conflicted person. And one can make an argument that and again, I'm unfortunate in this situation because I have friends and acquaintances that view it this way. But one can make an argument that this whole trial is a pressure cooker, and that if you have the wrong call being made, then the whole city is going to go up into a shit show. And
so they made it a political call rather than a.
You're right. And then there was even a statement by a public official that said something like, "Oh, if they're not going to hear us at the ballot, or they're not like if they're not going to hear us at the jury, they're going to hear us at the ballot box or something odd like this, right?" And people kind of like misconstrued that as like, "Oh, if they're not going to make the call I want, then we're going to do something about it," right? And that's
there
something.
Were a few to interject in terms of topical things. There were two instances of this. One, at the Oscars, you had Viola Davis saying that if the outcome was different, she won't be wearing high heels tonight, she'd be wearing marching boots.
And you're like, that's a lie. We all know that's a lie. But okay, whatever.
That's very performative as yourself. But then you also have a Fox talking head who said that, "I'm glad this was the decision because now they won't riot."
Yeah, the pressure was taken off from the pressure cooker.
Yeah, and he was actually struck down by a drunk Judge Janine Pirro, which I thought was kind of funny. Because what he said was really fucking dumb.
No, but this is the type of, like, you give the flimsiest argument about why your side is right, people are going to stick to it. And this is one of the things where jury was we had a previous podcast that talked about how the case should be kind of sanitized so that race and people and gender and sex as much as you can. And life imitates art sort of thing, where the jury members are what their names and their race and their sex are all undisclosed, right? Like people don't know who these people are, um, and people find that to be very jarring, because if you're supposed to be judged by a pool of your peers, and yet you don't know who
How
they
do you
are.
know that? Yeah, how do you know that you're a peer?
And then,
In
it's
this
like, well,
case,
because the case is so inflammatory,
that you're.
this is the protection of the jury, right? And then you're like, okay, that's a red flag, And especially if you're on the conservative side of things, you're like, so you're admitting that there is a risk here, right? That there's a risk that these jury, the people that are supposed to be objective, that they have some liabilities that they must accept. And who's to say that their names are not going to be leaked, right? And so this is ultimately a reason why faith comes into it, because it has some, I wouldn't say strong parallels. I would say it's super weak, but you have these type of things where if you're a pastor or a priest, you can definitely make it your bully puppet to say, look, we're seeing this happen again, where the crowds of people are, clamoring for this, and this is injustice. And again, you give the flimsiest argument to somebody, they're gonna cling on to it like a life raft.
Yeah, whatever excuse you need.
Yep. So I I actually had people internationally kind of like, as I'm waiting for meetings, before the host goes on in some like Zoom thing, they would ask me, "Hey, so Phil, you're from Minnesota. Like, how's that all going on for you?" And I'm like, "Look, I can't say much about it because it's against our company guidelines, right?
Yeah.
But I will say this much, like, uh, I don't like the fact that objective evidence had to be used, right? Like, if no objective evidence was used, if no one was recording it because smartphones didn't exist, this whole conversation would be different. I can guarantee you that much.
Hmm.
And then the second thing is, it's like everything is political, and that's as much as I can say,
Yeah.
right?
Anything is a society, it's gonna be at this.
So
It's just whether or not it's charged.
I cannot like show my hands because that's an HR trip, right? So,
Mhm.
um, when you talk about a pastor or a priest or some cleric or whatever go in front of a crowd, and they're saying something like, "Well, politics and religion must be separated." They're like, "Okay, that's cool, right?" But then but to what extent? We all know that they're lying. We all know that they're cheating. We all know that they're using this as advertisement for the party that they want to have. And it's almost ridiculous to assume that you can separate these two at this point. Um, and I
No.
and so when you're like the litmus test that you're saying, Mike, it makes a lot of sense. Like if you start to get political, right, then you should lose your
Tax-free exemptions,
tax
whatever.
exemptions, because now you're basically just a political arm of a party that's just trying to drum up votes, right? But on the other hand, those type of churches that are like that, they can, in my opinion, I don't have the numbers, but those are like the mega churches, right? Like they could
Well, I mean, I
afford to.
did specifically reference Pat Robertson, who was the head of one of those megachurches.
I mean, like, what is that guy's name? Some
Creflo Dollar.
Joel Olston, right? Like Olstein. Like these
Yeah,
guys.
the most Christian person who wouldn't open up his halls for people
Mhm.
Yeah,
running away from a
yeah,
hurricane.
yeah.
But
Just
these
disgusting.
people probably can afford whatever taxes are going to be levied against them. Like they own a
They
freaking stadium,
absolutely.
right?
Yep, they absolutely could.
But I will bet you dollars to donuts that a lot of these minority-owned churches, right, or not owned, but minority type of churches that like are African American, or yeah, I could say for sure that like the churches that try to teach the what I would consider to be more of the original concept of of being a good person or stop being an asshole, like those small churches will go under because they can't afford it. It's
That's
almost like you're the unintended consequences. Yeah, I don't want churches and politics to intermingle, so I think that we should start taxing them. You'll end up having a lot more mega churches that are just full of assholes, and a lot of the small churches that really kind of needed that to be able to stay alive
this is
will
why I say
go.
this is why I say property taxes. If you got a bigger property, you pay more
Not necessarily true though. I mean, like,
in your area.
yeah, I mean,
If you're a
um,
parish that has an acre, for your, 500 parishioners, and you're levied with a tax where you now have to pay that land tax. That's way more detrimental than if you have the former Houston Rockets Stadium as your megachurch, and you're getting $50-60 million a year.
Yeah. I mean,
It's like a flat tax. It obviously skews towards the rich.
Yep.
That's true.
And plus these small churches, like some of the things that they have going for them is the fact that they're like conveniently located, right?
Yeah, and they're actually the smaller ones are probably actually doing, helpful things for the community.
But like the
Okay.
intention of this topic is that those churches which have a broader reach than their county or their city are the ones that need to be held to a higher standard. Much like specifically the mega churches, I would think. Because I don't know if a
Yeah.
lot of Catholic
I honestly-
dioceses are saying vote for Trump because he'll get rid of Roe v. Wade on their Sunday mass.
I still think though that I don't know, and it doesn't have. It's not just churches. I'm talking about any nonprofit.
But what about
really.
specifically political nonprofits? Like Get Out the Vote in Georgia by Stacey Abrams. I think that's a nonprofit.
Yeah, but like I'm talking like if they have land on which they have people working, right? Like an office building, they should be paying property taxes on that office building.
They probably do, right?
And they probably do.
It'd just be at a lower rate because they're a non-profit institution.
Yeah, maybe.
Like the National Football League.
Mhm.
They're a non-profit.
That's a fucking lie.
They're a non-profit because they threw millions of dollars at senators to make it so the NFL is a non-profit.
I mean,
Let's also add in sports.
Let's take out
teams.
non-profit organizations of a political
Just
nature and just like
anything
any
that
non-profit
owns-
that makes more than $20 million really needs to be scrutinized.
Yeah, I think yep, you're right. You're right. If there is a nonprofit,
If you're paying your dude $60 million a year and you give him a Boeing 737 as part of his re-sign bonus, there's an issue with your nonprofit.
Well, and here's my fucking problem with a lot of nonprofits, churches included, but also just regular nonprofits. Most of those costs, unfortunately, go to administration of just managing the funds and paying people who are doing the work.
But couldn't one make the argument that in order for your nonprofit to function, you need to pay those people to do that?
And I agree,
work?
you absolutely do need to pay those people. But when the money you're making for donations, like out of people's generosity, when more than like 80% is going towards funding the organization itself and not the community or people or project it's trying to serve, that's a problem. Like there should be a different, that's not a successful nonprofit to me. Like
It's successful to them. I'd love to get $250,000 a year to do almost nothing.
Well, and it's like I think that they serve an important purpose and they need to exist, and so you do need to pay the people who are running them, but it shouldn't be like you can't serve people if you're just like, what is it? I don't know, like the Susan B. Anthony Foundation for Breast Cancer. Like
was that the one I saw a pie chart that was like horrifically skewed to what the money was actually going to
exactly. And it's like it goes more towards advertising, like getting that pink shit and their like having their brand out. And like I'm just like, yes, some of this is important and does need to happen, and I do think you need to put some money towards marketing, some money towards administration. Like it is important, you need to do that, but when it's that high a percentage, that's not a successful organization. You're not serving the cause you say you are at that point.
I mean, a lot more people care about cancer, kinda. Enough to give $5 and then not think about it as their,
And this is why I have a problem with like just having like the word out. That's only half the battle. Like,
and
you
that's
need
what
to
Twitter
follow
is for.
through. Ugh.
My thought is that there probably are organizations that are very useful or impactful, like the one that gives children like their dying wish, right?
Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Make-A-Wish. Or I mean, like these things are very. I think it's easy to cherry pick the ones that are just so bad because there's so many.
Well, like Susan G. Coleman does some good stuff,
Yeah,
but a
that's the one.
lot of
Not
their
Susan B. Anthony. Thank you,
yeah.
Coleman. God. That's a different person entirely.
Women's suffrage. Well, like 2% is actually going to
man.
educating women about voting. Oh my
I've
god!
had
Why
one
is
too
she
many
on a
beers
coin?
today.
But
One
yeah,
too many
like,
beers.
but it's a sad part of America where you have to spend that much on marketing. And because you have to employ people who are good at marketing, that they are going to command a higher dollar or they will go into for-profit business.
Yeah.
So you
So
have
this
to
is why I'm
be
saying
an almost competitive employer even though you're a nonprofit.
yes. And if you're going to be competitive and capitalistic in a way, you should be paying property taxes.
The issue
I agree, but then what's the incentive for Susan G. Coleman Foundation to exist?
The cause that's the incentive. If it's for profit, then that's not what it's actually there for, is it?
But if owning those large office buildings around the country, because you need regional offices, you can't just have one central location
I
to
think
do all of this work.
I think we've learned that working from home is very possible. And
Yeah, there have been a lot
I'm
of
just
lessons
kidding.
learned from this last year. They haven't been implemented, which is why we're having this discussion now.
I just
Because
feel
we're
like
seeing
there's
all the wasted money in a
can-
lot of these
well,
organizations.
and wasted property space. Like these huge office buildings. I mean, I'm not saying that they're not useful.
They aren't.
But they aren't. So I am saying that.
They are not useful.
A lot of them are just. I think they're useful for the people who need to be out of the house. Like they don't have a dedicated workspace in their home. So I think that is useful, but I also feel like people could just work from home. It's not.
There's a double-edged sword here.
Yeah.
It's going to be real interesting what happens to a lot of not
Office
upscale,
buildings?
but like skyscrapers that are meant to be just office complexes,
Yeah.
where it was just you get to go from your home where you have a computer and a desk and a chair, and you have to drive 20 minutes to go to this computer and a desk and a chair.
A chair, with an internet connection,
Yeah.
which you also have at your home.
Yeah,
Like it really.
we haven't seen the ramifications of what a year plus of COVID is actually going to do to the workforce.
Because like
And it's going to be
you
a huge change.
Well, two things. One is that it seems like businesses are doing just fine with their workforce. Their white-collar workforce is working from home and managing daycare for their kids and school closures and all that craziness that came with the pandemic. The quarterlies for most of these businesses been going pretty steady, if not solid, during this not even recession, during this pandemic, and yet the people are still working. But on the double-edged sword of this is that like companies could be like, well then why do I need to hire from the city? Why don't I just hire from Duluth or Mankato or Bemidji, right? And so,
well, taxes would be the reason why you wouldn't necessarily do that, maybe,
but
potentially.
I think that there's another argument like, well, why do I have to care about these cities? Why don't I just hire from anybody within this time zone,
Yeah.
right? And so like you can, if your workforce can totally do their job at home, then why hire expensive people? Why not hire people from
They definitely drive down the pay. Yeah.
so
Then you
I
also
mean,
have tax incentives from those employees that can now write off a new desk because it's needed for work, or a new computer because it's needed for work.
I'm thinking that if I was a ruthless business person, that I wouldn't hire Americans. I would hire the cheap source of labor that can still do the office work because it's been proven that I don't need to have them here. And so I think that the balance needs to be struck where that's my first thought of the double-edged sword. The second one is like for many organizations that we want to instill property tax on, I think it's not going to hurt the businesses I want them to kind of I'd say it's not hurting the people I want them to hurt.
Well, it's like we're not trying to hurt anybody.
But I actually
But we
kind
want
of
them to pay their fucking fair share.
right.
I guess,
I feel like
saying.
the big organizations they're gonna feel some type of pain, but they're gonna pay their fair share, so to speak. And a lot of the small
Or they'll find a loophole.
or they'll find a loophole. But a lot of the small ones that are actually trying to make a difference in people's lives are just going to be crushed, right? So you're basically giving the incumbency a huge advantage. And then finally, when it comes to like nonprofits in general that are not just churches, I don't know if it's okay. Maybe just let's just talk about churches actually for my final point. it's weird that we were going to tax spirituality to some extent. Like just I mentioned this a long time back, but um, taxing things in a way is a way to reduce that service. So I'm going to tax alcohol and cigarettes. Why? Because I want to add a sin tax to it. I want to make it more undesirable for my constituents or my worker
Wait,
bees
so
to do
is
that.
is the syntax in this situation something that is superfluous to proper adult functioning, and is potentially detrimental to the lifestyle of those that participate in that act?
You could say that that's what happens, right? Gasoline tax is one of them.
I
It,
see how that it would be interpreted as not a syntax in this case, but like a taxing spirituality. But that's not like that. I could see how it could be seen that way, but that's not exactly what I'm taxing. I'm taxing property owners,
but
people
that's
who own these like anyone who owns a piece of land and is using it to further a cause or a mission. And it doesn't have to be just a cause. It's just any business, any business.
But
If
if
it's
that
a,
mission is apolitical,
I don't even, no, it doesn't matter. It's land on country property, like it's on land. It's property on country soil. It should be taxed because it is using like like it's using roads. It's using city
oh, I found the loophole.
owned. It's using city owned electricity and water. Like it's all of these services that they are benefiting from, that we pay taxes for that they don't necessarily, or they get a reduced rate. Maybe I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it. Maybe, but
I mean, it's a very complex legal and like tax issue because there are I'm quite certain there have been religious institutions that have had their tax exempt status revoked because of certain
probably
things they did.
could be.
I don't know that for sure, but I really feel there are cases of it, and of our 10
Courts
listeners,
decided,
one of
nah,
them's
you're
bound to
not
be
a
a lawyer.
church.
So go back
No,
to
they're
your
not.
briefs from college, and maybe one of them will pop
Boy.
up. But I think there have been repercussions for religious institutions that have overstepped their bounds. But having a blanket all for the sake
Yeah,
of
it would.
Phil's
It
nomenclature, like the spirituality should not be taxed
agreed.
because it is a comfort and has been something of
Well, and
a
that
separation of the governmental aspects of American life and the religious aspects of American life are meant to be separate things. When that
yep.
gets gray, then shit should happen. But as a blanket statement, there should be that protection, much like innocent until proven guilty.
I agree with this, and I know what you're. I mean, the idea is that, well, look, we're not taxing spirituality, we're just taxing the fact that you're using our infrastructure, right? Somebody's got to pay for that. And we don't care if you're playing a game of hearts and spades with cards or bridge, or you're, worshiping the sun god. If you're going to be a
If you're
participant in
gonna
this market,
operate, yeah, if you're gonna operate on our soil, you need to pay taxes.
and I think that ultimately one of the problems is zoning, right?
Mm.
Which is it's such a mundane thing, but it's actually a really big problem in this
Yeah.
country. So like, what would you zone that? Zone that as retail business? No, that doesn't make sense. Well, zone that as a business. They're offering a service. Well, okay, but then how would you? That's not really quite a service like this, right?
Community
If
service.
if a church sells
Yeah,
indulgences, can they be retail then?
right.
Yeah.
And they do. So that's why it's like I
If they have a gift shop. If they have a gift shop.
and
Yeah,
then
retail?
if you buy your like little wooden cross after the service for $5, does that make it a commercial business?
or books, right? Like there was a
Yep.
case in
There's
I
some.
think it was the eastern suburbs where there was a house that just continuously had garage sales. And then they slapped a city ordinance on that house. They're like, look, you're a business now. Like this whole place is not zoned for business.
Yeah.
So one of the arguments I've heard was like, oh well, why don't you just use your own house as a house of worship, right? And just invite your friends over. Like, yeah, I'm gonna invite 50
That's-
people over to my house
But
every Sunday.
suddenly,
Wait, wasn't that an
suddenly
issue in
you're-
COVID where some state had to shut some private Bible study thing down because it was more than 5 people?
Right. I
From
mean,
different
Well, and
households?
that's and you're not like a household is not meant to be a
Congregation area?
Yeah, a congregation area. It's not a public or even a private area for congregation like that. It's not what it's. Most neighborhoods would be like, no, you can't do that. You can't have 50 fucking cars pulling up into your driveway and parking on our
Yeah,
street.
that's
Like,
not quite
no.
a practical
Suddenly,
solution every day, like, or even, it could be every
yeah,
day, but
or
every
every
week.
Sunday, like, yeah, because suddenly you're an operation.
Yeah.
You're not just living there. This isn't just a homestead anymore.
So, like in English law, this is a really funny case where it's like, okay, yeah, I agree, but like, how do you actually get this to work? It's a very tricky thing, especially when it comes to like people complaining to the city and stuff. But
Yeah.
the last point too is like, um, there's gonna be so much um uh fuckery going on, right? So like,
But
I'm
isn't there already?
not quite, right? Like, there are ways to. I believe that they wanted to have a new like temple, or maybe it was a church that the city itself didn't want, right? And so the city itself like tried to do their best by saying, well, the occupancy isn't going to be good enough or whatever. And then the people would say, well, our architect changed it. And eventually they're able to get through. But if you don't have those type of zoning protections and you have this thing that could be retail, the council could say something like, well, we just don't like it because fuck you, right? We just don't need another service like that here. And yeah, I guess you could go for a legal perspective, but then it gets really kind of, or let's say, okay, fine, you got us, but we're gonna raise your taxes to this percentage. What are you gonna do about it? And then, okay, more lawsuits, but then like,
I mean, obviously you'd have to
I
assume
mean,
there's going to be some fairness involved here. Like
no.
obviously, and yeah, we know that
Based
that's
off
an
like red
idealistic.
zoning law or redlining laws that we had, even in this state, you know that it's not quite that way, historically speaking.
Yeah.
I I think that like that's why it's really hard for me to say something like, oh well, we should tax them because they're basically a business. You know, they're not a
We
small
should
mom
tax
and
them if
pop shop.
they make more than X amount of like it'd be probably random, but like if they make more than X amount of
It
money,
couldn't be random. You'd have
well,
to have some
there would
stratification
be
for it.
yeah, there would be a specific dollar amount per
But is
like
that based on regional? Is that based on state? Is that based on
yeah,
federal?
it would have to be a
Like it's a
it would have to
weird
be a state
quagmire.
thing. Shit, it would have to be a state thing. Balls. But
Gosh, it's
yeah,
like
it
our
would have
founding
yeah.
fathers were kind of onto something with states' rights, or they were onto something
Get out of
completely
my
horrible, as
get out of my
like
house.
having 50 basically independent countries that somehow function together.
I don't know, man. I don't know the solution, but I feel like
No, there's a solution. We just all need to be atheist.
yeah,
Then we
that
don't have
really is.
churches. Then we don't have these issues.
Yeah,
Well,
forget
Sorry,
we
Phil.
will.
churches. People can no. We don't have to all be atheists. We just know none of that weird social creepy woo
No,
stuff.
in America, we just need to treat religion like we treat sex. We understand people do it, and we never fucking talk about it, because why would you talk about that in public?
I don't think that's
Agreed.
quite equivalent, but okay.
Agreed.
I'm fine
Hey,
with it.
you talk about what happened with your pastor's sermon last Sunday. That's fine. I talked to you about what happened at the orgy in Nebraska in 2012.
I have some very religious positive friends.
Hey,
Instead of sex positive.
this is Charles. He's on earshot, but just I need to he's pretty Lutheran. I just really need you to understand that he's pretty Lutheran.
He's really into Christianity. It's a little weird.
Real against indulgences. I mean, he was all on the 95 thesis. Like he wrote the 96 thesis, and it's don't get him started. I
I
really
don't
have to
even
talk
know
about
where we're going with this.
Now,
Anyway,
superfluous anecdotal humor.
Phil is currently doing his best impression of Captain Picard.
Facepalming.
Facepalming.
I didn't know your hand could get that big on your face, Phil. You're digging into that.
It's really going in deep.
Yep. Again, I don't know the solutions here. I feel like some nonprofits are getting away with too much, and they're deviating from their purpose and their original cause, their original mission, and they're just they're becoming a business. So if they're going to behave
Agreed.
like a business, they should be treated like one.
What, like the NRA trying to declare bankruptcy in New York, even though they're telling their donors that they're in the best financial situation they've ever been in the history of their non-profit?
Yeah, the NRA and the NFL can, well, be treated as a business as far as I'm concerned. They're not nonprofits. That's fucking bullshit. Anyway.
Yeah, there are a lot of
Whoever-
other issues. I think the solution to this is better education and better critical thinking.
And maybe
upon
better
what's supposed to be an educated populace.
Well, that's the solution. It's your solution for everything. There's got to be
Yes,
like a different...
goddamn, if people know more, they might make better decisions.
They
Whew,
won't.
That's
They
so
won't.
out there.
They won't.
They may, and I will rather gamble on that may as opposed to the fucking we turned off the light and we wonder why it's dark world we live in now.
Where did the sun go?
But also not too much. Like we just want them to know just enough.
Just
But
enough.
Don't
No, fucking know
further.
too much. God damn it, you can never not know too much. I don't care if it makes you feel
Yeah,
sad.
you can.
No, you can never not know too much.
I mean, I agree, but there is too much.
There certainly is too much, but you can never not know too much.
I mean,
You might need different coping mechanisms to deal with how ridiculous shitty the world is, because now we have mass communication and we can see how shitty the world is at real time, and it's not something we look back upon like, oh yeah, you heard of this like rape of Nanking? That was real bad. Glad we don't live in that world now. Oh shit, what's happening? Oh god, it's like the rape of Oh my god, history's repeating itself.
Surprise. It does that.
too much.
Oh, it just,
And-
Even when
I've
people
never been
know
so
about
upset
it.
in an episode like this. Congratulations, Sarah.
You're
Also,
welcome.
to my Catholic mom, I did my best. Let's
Did you run out of that devil's argument sauce?
double argument sauce. Like a lot of my, like I shouldn't say this too loudly, but a lot of the money that my Catholic church that I went to as a kid went, like it goes to Italy or to the Vatican, right? Like I thought
Yep.
it was really kind of silly. But hey,
Did it go to
Yeah,
specifically
and you know what?
resembling child rapists?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know what that money goes towards?
yeah, it's really kind of like
It's a fucking hide the pee game with child rapists. Yep.
yeah.
The more you know, Phil. That star is gonna hit the earth and we're
That
all gonna
is-
die.
And that's my problem is if you're gonna be literally a for-profit institution if you're gonna behave like a business, you should be treated like one.
Well, that's fair.
That's all I can say is like
Yeah.
I don't know how better
That's
to
solidly
phrase
succinct.
it. But
Yeah.
if I guess maybe we need to work on like what defines a nonprofit better, but I don't know, that sounds hard too. It just frustrates me. It frustrates me that these people who say they're doing these good works and these services are only kind of half-assing it, and I don't think that they're.
I would be okay if they're half-assing it. I'm sorry to bother you.
I mean,
like, sorry
no,
to,
you're right.
interject and sorry to say all this
Better
stuff,
than
but-
not. Better than not. Better that they exist and do their works because they are needed. They are necessary. I just and I guess taxing is almost it becomes more of a punishment, right? Or
Well, is it
another gate.
But is it a punishment if what the participants are participating in is seen as bad?
Well, that's the
Or-
thing is like, why do people see taxes as a punishment? It's not a punishment.
Well, I mean, I
it's
see it
just-
with like tobacco and alcohol, as those are detrimental things that we can ingest willingly if we know the
Yeah.
consequences of that ingestion, and we should be
But-
taxed on that because we are literally ingesting things that will kill us.
I mean, okay.
It
that
should be a
is-
reasonable deterrent.
So, all right, with that, yes, most people would see it as a punishment, and that's unfortunate. You can't just that's how people will see it. People see taxes as a punishment, and they shouldn't though. Like if you're taxing, if it's a sin tax in this case, for tobacco and alcohol and stuff, rather than seeing it as a punishment to the people who consume that, it should be seen as I am paying forward money to these things that I know are harmful or potentially harmful to others, right? So in theory, if we were in a perfect world, those taxes from alcohol and tobacco would go towards helping people with cancer or putting money towards people who were harmed by someone drunk driving. You know, like things like that. Like if we had a perfect world and we could just funnel the money of those things towards the things that they are, you know, being taxed for. But that's not the world we live in, and money is, well, money.
I think it's funny too that like people hate taxes, but they're okay with giving 10% of their income to the church.
A church, which is
Yeah.
basically its own tax.
Right.
Well,
It's like that's
does
strange.
anybody actually pay the 10%? Really?
They absolutely do,
Yeah,
They
I
do.
or
know,
more.
I know.
It becomes
Yeah,
it becomes a
it's
bragging right. In
ridiculous.
some,
Right.
Yeah.
It's really, but we don't have a bragging right for taxes, but we definitely have
No.
a bragging right for like
No,
paying the
we have a
church.
bragging right for taxes. It's the richer you are, the less you pay. That's your brag.
I mean,
Well, for now.
that's not a bad. I mean, like that makes sense to me, right? But like
But
the other way around is weird. Like I don't know.
But that's
I
my
just,
problem is like why do we see taxes as a punishment? Like yes, it sucks that like in a way it sucks because like okay, all that work you did and you have to pay you know, the government a portion of that work. But like you are benefiting not like it should almost be the same, it should almost be socially the same thing. Like if you make X amount of money and you have to pay Y amount of, you know, Y percent of dollars towards the, you know, like the more you pay, like it should be like a look how much I'm doing for
well,
the community as a whole.
No,
the
because
society
this
as a
is
whole.
America, and it's fuck
And
you, I
we're-
got mine.
I know, and that's the problem is it shouldn't be that way.
it is.
It
But I mean,
shouldn't.
But that's the American dream. The
Yeah, it
American
is.
dream is literally having the power to say "fuck you, I got mine" to someone's
That's true.
face.
I
that is
wish
true.
it was the other way. I wish it was people are like, look how much I'm doing for my community, my society. Like I've worked so hard for everyone else here. Like and unfortunately that's not
Yeah, and,
no one
and every
praises
50
anyone
years we
for
get
paying
one
taxes.
Jimmy Carter. We get one person who was president of the United States of America that is still building homes for Habitats for Humanity, and he's
I know.
95 years old.
And he's
He's a fucking national treasure. And he still wasn't even that good of a president.
I will say one other thing too about why people don't like paying taxes as far as like a civic duty or, you know, like trying to just as a good thing to do is that I feel like everyone feels attacked no matter who
Yeah.
you are, right?
Yeah.
So why would you want to pay taxes when people frame you as the villain? And
Because you think you're above the society that you actively participate in.
not
And that is a psychological problem with those that feel they're being attacked because they make money and feel that they shouldn't pay
Yeah.
more than they pay, even though they make so much more than so many other people in the society that they, again, live in.
well, no, even if you're very poor, right, and you're a minority and you feel attacked by the system, you know, and you're
Like,
making
yeah, why
like
would I put my money
would I
towards
want
the
to
system that
yeah,
hurts me?
right? It's
That
like
literally is keeping me down.
right. It's like
Well,
our
those people should pay less in taxes.
well, like
as
the
far as I'm
libertarian
concerned.
like, you know, taxation is theft, you know, that type of joke, but you know, for some people it certainly feels like you're not really getting in your money back and you see this, you know, $1 trillion weapons program or billions of dollars or maybe even a billion with a B of grift. And you're like, well, wait, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, these people are making
Yeah.
bank.
Well,
You
and that's
know,
what I'm saying is like it needs to definitely be better. I don't know how that.
So we have
Yeah,
a lot of societal issues that we need to
But-
actively look at as a populace as opposed to just individual talking heads or 3 people on a podcast.
I mean, yes, but I still feel like the way we look at taxes could be we could transform our way of thinking about them instead of
that-
seeing them as a punishment or as an attack. It could be something better. Is all I'm saying.
So we need a structural, countrywide, philosophical change in how
So
we
what
view
we need-
capitalism.
Yep. So what we need is more civics
A
class
cultural
and teaching.
revolution
Nope.
to
Well, yes, but
change how we feel about our current
maybe
form
just
of government
even
and economic
fucking-
plan.
maybe just
Ah.
even having a
We
government
need,
class.
we need maybe like a great leap forward to jump past all of these problems
No.
we are currently looking
Guys.
at.
I got the best way to close this out is
boy.
that we really need a service that is going to teach people that you should be selfless and that you should be more like a guy that's willing to sacrifice themselves. And to make this
Phil, no,
super
no,
accessible, why don't we have that tax free, right?
No!
And just try to share it as many people
Nope.
as possible that you too can go to heaven.
Phil,
After which Nicene Council,
child rape, child rape.
Which doctrine are we applying to? Are we going with the original Sanskrit, or are we looking at the Greek translation,
Vetoed.
or are we going with the Latin translation that turned its way into like a French Italian, or...
I can give you the answer. As a recovering Catholic, I'm sure you know which answer I'm going to give.
Buddhist.
And thanks, Mom, for giving
Nope. Should have government
so
classes.
much money to the Vatican. Bye.
To hide all those fucking child rapists and send them to Argentina. Well done. Well done.
Like the Nazis. Bye, Mom.
Bye, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. I feel like there's more we could say, but all right.